Okay, thank you very much. It's always good to be back again in the Netherlands. I like it here very much. And whether you know it or not, you're really one of the more innovative countries in the world in recruiting and in technology. A lot of interesting things come out of the Netherlands, and I know that a lot of people don't realize that, but I think it's to the credit of the Netherlands. You're a very entrepreneurial society. And that's going to be really, really important as we move into 2027. I think we're going to have to continue to be even more entrepreneurial than we have been. So I'm going to just take you on a little journey, talk about a few highlights that I think we're all going to have to be aware of and learn to live with as we move into this future. Okay, I think there are 4 big trends that we all have to be prepared to think about, talk about, and understand in depth. The first one is recruitment process automation, which is, very, very rapidly taking over a lot of the things that we all have done traditionally, and our role is significantly changing and will continue to change as recruiters, recruitment leaders, as anyone who's in the talent space. The second thing is innovation, and innovation is key to everything in the next decade or two. If you're not innovative, you're going to fall far behind. It's going to be really important to constantly be experimenting and trying new things. We'll talk about that. We're going to talk about the power and need for better analytics and how important the analytics and data part of the future is. And we're going to end up talking about the power of networks. And then I'm going to just end up with a little bit about the future as I see it for recruiting and where it's going and what it might look like in another 15 years or 10 years. So the first thing is recruitment process automation. How many of you are doing anything in recruitment process automation now? Anyone? Okay, I see a couple of hands, not too many. I hope if I come back next year, everybody will put their hand up, okay? Recruitment process automation is really taking the recruiting process and looking at it in a step-by-step fashion from branding to workforce planning, taking each one of those steps and saying, what part of this could we automate? Should we automate? And where are we right now in this process? So if I look at branding, we're probably the best companies are maybe doing about 10% of branding is being done in some sort of automated fashion, distributing automatic messaging, putting out certain kinds of videos, using social media, and so forth. Sourcing is far more automated at this point, and there are some companies that are probably even more than 50%, but I said 50% is probably a fair average for companies that are using more sophisticated bots and other sorts of tools to locate people, to find talent, and to bring that to the table to interview and talk to. Screening candidates and assessment, both are around 90%. This is the sweet spot in automation right now in recruitment. There's really no need to interview anyone. I think interviewing is extremely about yesterday for the most part. I think it's important for a hiring manager to have an interview as a way to develop a relationship, but it's not important as an assessment tool. And for recruiters to waste time doing that, I think is pretty much not valuable because automated tools, assessment tests, simulations, online gaming, all sorts of things can do this process far better and much more objectively than we can, no matter how good we think we are, okay? The marketing part of this, the candidate relationship management part of this, it can be pretty heavily automated right now, and that's a growing field as well. Probably the 2 fastest growing areas are assessment and marketing, and reaching out to candidates and establishing relationships with them. And I'm going to talk in a few minutes about chatbots and what's going on in that space, which is, I think, pretty fascinating. As far as administration, the overhead, the recording, the reporting, that should be 95 to 99% automated at this point. If it's not, then you really need to work on fixing that part of the process. I know many organizations I work with that have a 20% automated in that area. That needs to be increased, and the ATS world is already pretty capable of that, as is the HRIS world. Onboarding tools, onboarding scenarios, a lot of that can go onto the online workspace and doesn't need to involve you or anyone in the organization at a high level in doing it. Measurement Metrics should be highly automated. It should derive out of your administration and your other areas, and it should automatically feed in so that you get the kind of reporting and metrics and data that you need to make decisions about the recruitment process. The engagement piece is kind of parallel with marketing. It's, how do you continue to develop a relationship with a candidate once you've found them? And I think, again, there's a lot of chatbots, other automated tools, candidate relationship management tools that can automatically reach out to candidates, engage them, provide them information and content, and keep them pretty interested in what's going on in the company. And finally, workforce planning, which again, I think can largely, or a big chunk of it can be automated. So if we really look at this and see where this is going to go, I think it's pretty clear that in the next decade or so, virtually this whole thing will be automated. And the pieces that won't be, we'll talk about in a few minutes. So innovation is really the key. This is what it is. This is about being brave and willing to move forward and do stuff that you might not normally do and be comfortable in a disruptive world. And you're going to see all kinds of emerging technologies, disruptive ideas, new models for recruiting. You're just going to see these start flowing out in the next few months. You're going to see companies that are starting to reorganize their function completely differently. You're going to see a whole new set of skills that we think recruiters should have. And we're going to see lots of technologies that we can only dream of right now. I put together a little disruptive curve chart. And this is just kind of, it starts up there with the green stuff, which is kind of, ho-hum stuff. The internet, mobile, social, cloud, big data, analytics. And I say ho-hum, although it's almost brand new, and most of us still haven't mastered all of that yet. But then there's all the stuff that's really trends and innovation, predictive analytics, which we'll talk about, the Internet of Things, robotics, and all of these are going to have huge impacts on recruitment and what we do here. The virtual and augmented reality, that's really growing quickly now with Google jumping in, and you're going to see automated, virtual recruitment environments where the candidates are going to be immersed in a virtual world and have to make decisions about things, and that will be a screening process for candidates. You're going to see chatbots, which we've already talked about out there. They're almost moving up into the green area. And then we've got some of the really weird stuff coming, like biometric assessment, where the computer is going to look at your iris and your face and determine your skills, determine whether you're telling the truth or not, match that up to personality analysis. This is already a commercial product from HireVue. Some other companies are already developing this, so it's not all that crazy. Things like ultrasonic tracking or other kinds of tracking of people using embedded chips, the Internet of Things, even in your phone. So, right now, given the right apps, you can track a candidate's physical location. You know where they are at any given time. And this sounds really scary, and it is. It's invasive, yes, but it's happening. And so we have to learn how to deal with this. An intelligent personal agent. This is kind of a much more sophisticated high-end chatbot that actually acts as your personal assistant. Google has their personal assistant if you use an Android phone, but that's kind of a primitive thing. This is a very sophisticated thing where you can say, call somebody, give them a message. You don't have to do anything. It'll do this for you. It'll say, contact this candidate and tell him or her this or that. These things are coming. You're going to see, passive candidate assessment, where the assessment is completely done by using the candidate's social media profile. It'll go out and look at their Facebook profile, their LinkedIn profile, assess their skills and competencies. IBM is already doing this with Connexa and their Watson tools. A lot of other companies are doing this as well. So I can give a pretty good, probably an 80% confident level analysis of your personality and skills without ever seeing you or talking to you at all, just by looking at your Facebook profile and LinkedIn profile, assuming you're pretty active in those social medias, okay? Algorithms that are going to automate recruiting. These are formulas that are going to make decisions and put weights on various characteristics of candidates to recommend people for you to hire. And you're going to see DNA analysis ultimately. You may ask candidates for a DNA sample. Several companies in the US are doing this right now. It's been a huge cry because they don't want to hire anybody that may get diabetes, or they don't want to hire anybody that may have a multiple sclerosis in the future. And by doing some DNA analysis, they can predict your likelihood of getting a certain disease. And they say, this is going to cost us a lot of money, so we don't want to hire you. Right? So this is a huge controversial topic right now. And they're asked, candidates are being said, should I or shouldn't I give my DNA? All right? So all this. And then we've got all these blue things, which are sort of the big macro social trends. We've got things like blockchain and the whole changing in the economics of money and what's going to happen there. We've got lifespan, which is increasing tremendously. We may live, if you're in your 20s or 30s right now, very high likelihood you're going to live to be 110, 120. So, if you're going to have another extra 30 years beyond what most people expect to live today, what are you going to do with that extra time? How long are you going to work, and what are you going to do, and how are we going to deal with this? We've got things like the whole contingent workplace, the gig economy. What does this mean for us in the future? We've got all kinds of things out there that have nothing directly to do with recruiting, but ultimately are going to change everything about the workplace and how we talk about people. So you've got to start thinking about this stuff. This is where innovation comes in. This is the really disruptive stuff of the future. Chatbots are not really disruptive. Chatbots are really evolutionary. Some of this other stuff is really disruptive. Right? And then we've got to look at new models of recruiting. Some people are just outsourcing everything to RPOs and saying we don't need any corporate recruitment. There's no need for it internally. Other people are saying, internal recruitment is just a liaison between the outside agency and the hiring managers internally, and all else is outsourced or automated. And other firms are just saying hiring managers are going to take over everything except sourcing, and we're going to provide them candidates. 2 companies that I work with right now have already gone to this model, where they're training hiring managers. They have a few internal recruiters, and these internal recruiters act as coaches for hiring managers. They just coach them in legal issues and help them decide about which candidate they might want to make an offer to, but they do no active, they never interview candidates, they don't ever touch candidates. All they do is source candidates, and the hiring managers do all the rest. So these are new disruptive models, and you may, many of you are probably saying these are horrible, I hate the idea, but these are things people are experimenting with right now. So you've got to decide where are we and what should we do, and maybe we're going to go that way, and how will I deal with that? Then we've got analytics. And the whole analytics space obviously is built on big data. I love this quote, land was the raw material in the agricultural era, iron was the material of the industrial age, and data is the material of our age right now. So we live in an era of data. We've got lots of data, and we have to analyze it and learn how to use it more effectively than we have. And that's our challenge, and that's really our current issue, I believe, that most of us face. How do we use all the data we have effectively? So analytics is technology that basically learns as candidates interact with you. It learns from data, and it ultimately can predict behavior, and it can predict the quality of work that a candidate does. So data equals a decision and leads to an action of some sort. And so using data is really what's going to make you smarter and more effective and more efficient. If you don't have a good idea of how to use data and interpret it, you're going to be left in the background of just only using your gut and intuition and being wrong about 50% of the time or more. Right? So you've got to decide how to do this. So you've got descriptive analytics that many of us already do. Most of us do it not very well, but we still do descriptive analytics. But descriptive analytics are not highly useful. They're all about yesterday. It's like looking in your car and say, I drove 30 miles and I went, 80 kilometers an hour. It's not very useful. Nice information, but what good is it? So you've really got to say, where are you going? What's the future? And that's the predictive analytics side of it. So, what's the future look like? Is this going to be a good candidate or not? Would you be a better candidate than him, or would he be a better candidate than you? And what are the criteria I'm used to decide that? And how do I know that's really true? And by doing that, you've got to go through the life cycle of people. You've got to look and say, who are our best employees? And you've got to define what you mean by best employee. And the things that I get very upset about or struggle with recruiters is we talk about quality of hire, but nobody can define it as far as I'm concerned. I've never heard an objective definition of quality. Something like how long somebody stays in a company is not quality. Really terrible people can stay a long time. So that's not a quality measure to me, okay? Hiring manager satisfaction, that's not a measure of quality. That's a measure of politics and influence and personality, but it's not a measure of quality. So how do you define quality? You need data to do that. That quality to me is somebody who produces more than anybody else, who's more productive, who makes more money for the company. That's a quality hire, and yet I don't think any of us know how to measure that. So that's the stuff we've got to figure out how to do. This is the future that we have to get into. And so the last one I'm going to really talk about are the networks out there. And the networks are really probably one of the more important concepts and the hardest one to get your head around, because this is really about looking differently at work and looking differently at what you do. And there's a couple kinds of networks. One network is I know you and you know me, and we're both on LinkedIn, and that's a network, okay? But that's one kind of network. The other kind of network is a network of skills and abilities, and your ability to combine that. Because I think what we're going to really see that jobs aren't going to exist. We're going to hire skills. And this is the fundamental thing. I took recruiters, because you guys are ostensibly recruiters, and I'm saying that our recruiting jobs are already being atomized. They're already being broken down. So we hire people that are just sourcers. We hire people who are just screeners. We hire people who just do specific things. And very few people in this room or anywhere could probably say, I do every single one of these things well. And then I've kind of put little plus and minus marks saying, how likely are these to be automated? How much could they be? And I think you can see a triple plus sign is pretty likely it is or will be automated. A double is, getting there. A one is possible, or even some is already done. And there's only three things left. And those three things are influencer, okay, closer, which is basically the same thing as an influencer, in my opinion, and an advisor. And those are the three things that, at least right now, a computer can't do very well. So those are your sweet spots. So becoming a super great interviewer is an absolute waste of your time. So the future of recruiting, just real quickly, where is it going? I think we've got four kinds of jobs out there. And I think that, if we look at transactional jobs and expert jobs, those are going to be highly automated. Many of you are experts. You're experts in one particular thing. That thing is probably going to be automated. Okay? Where you need to be is in those top two boxes. You've got to be a collaborator, a communicator, an influencer, a marketer, an innovator, and a developer. That's where you have to try to get yourself to be. So two possible scenarios for the future. Well, there's really three. One is nothing much changes. I don't think that one is a realistic scenario, so I didn't even put it up here. The second one is, machine learning is going to significantly augment what you do. It's going to help you make decisions. It's going to give you much more sophistication and skills at what you do. It's going to eliminate a lot of the skills that you currently think are important. And it's going to transform recruiting from transactional and expert to innovative, collaborative, and advising. So I think recruiting, as you know it today, is going to be a really tiny segment of the future, and your job is going to drastically morph. And scenario two is what could be and may someday be, which is we automate the whole darn thing. Okay? And you just push a button. The hiring manager says, I need a new person that can do X, and the computer says, here are a couple of them. Go ahead and interview them. Want me to call them? Sure. Could you call this one here? Okay. And it calls them up and they talk to them, and the hiring manager talks to them, and the computer is, while he's talking to them, the computer is assessing their skills and their background, and the manager is seeing on his screen a probability ratio of their being successful in the company, based on data from other people that have done this in the company. And at the end of the call, the hiring manager can say, gee, I'd love to talk to you some more. Why don't you come in tomorrow and make an offer? And the whole process takes a couple of hours, and he's hired a candidate. I don't think that's a crazy scenario. I think it's a pretty real scenario, and I think it may happen. So if that happens, your job is going to be to build the stuff that helped the hiring manager. It's not going to be to touch the candidate. So maybe the future of recruiting has nothing to do with candidates whatsoever. It has to do with understanding analytics and competencies and skills and what hiring managers need. And it's a whole opposite view of what recruiting is. So we've got to be able to think differently like that and be more creative around that. Well, the future is really exciting, but it's very, very challenging and scary. And recruitment is going to vastly transform, I can tell you right now, vastly. So I thank you very much. See you there.